Hey friends, welcome back to the Thrive in Aligned Healing podcast. This is episode 96, and this week we're going to talk about the STEAR model. So, the STEAR model is something that is kind of one of the core tenets of my coaching practice. I took it, really, the original idea came from Brooke Castillo in the life coach school. She was my first life coach. It really introduced me to life coaching, taught me everything that I know about being a coach and mindset work and thought work. So I do want to give credit where credit is due. I just took Brooke's model, she calls it the model, and I made it make more sense in my brain. So she talks about, when Brooke talks about the model that she created, she doesn't really necessarily say it's hers. She says it's common knowledge. It's just kind of how the universe works. It's how things work. And this is stuff that is fairly, like, we all kind of, we know it, but then we just don't have like the structure to put our fingers on it, right? It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It feels very common sensey. But when Brooke took all this common sense stuff that's been passed around for hundreds and thousands of years, that you can read different perspectives and take some books about, but when she put it in this like template, it just made sense. So I took hers and I made it into mine, the STEAR model. So STEAR. The reason I did that is because Dr. Carmen and I are both like very visual learners. I'm also a kinesthetic learner. Like, I can listen and learn, but I'm going to like actually assimilate it and use it in my life when I can see it and when I can go and action it out. So when I was thinking, when I was building my coaching practice and I was thinking about Brooke's model, and it just like, it was still kind of abstract to me, right? Like, I got it. It made sense. It changed my life, but to actually use it, I was running into this wall. I was so resistant to actually doing thought downloads, running models, because it just wasn't clicking with my brain. And then one day I was thinking about the model, and I was thinking about that picture of a boat, or that's like tethered to a dock, or the boat out in the ocean, and you can see the dock back here, and that's saying, like, I don't know, I mess these up all the time. Like, if you don't leave the shore or something, like, you don't to experience the ocean. I don't know. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Do you know the analogy, Carmen?
I've heard it. Yes.
Do you remember it?
I think you're on the right track. Yeah. If you don't, I don't know if you don't leave the shore, but yeah, if you don't ever untie, you don't experience.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So we know where we're heading to that. And so then I thought, life feels like, for most of us, that we're getting tossed and turned, right? Like, we have one wave, we're out in the middle of the ocean in this boat, okay? And we can see a beautiful, gorgeous island in the distance, right? It's like just beautiful. The turquoise water, you can see the dolphins jumping by the shoreline, right? It's very lush. It's got so many flowers. And I imagine, because I have all these people I look up to, like, I imagine Amanda Francis, because she's an Oklahoma girl. She's very successful out in Malibu, I think. And I imagine that Amanda was on this island and I was in this boat in the middle of the ocean where I could see it from a distance. And I'm like, why does Amanda get to be on this island? Why can't I be on that island? And it hit me. It was like, because Amanda manages her thoughts. Like, she doesn't allow the waves from the ocean. When she was in her boat out here, she didn't allow the waves in the ocean to throw her and direct her.
Yeah.
Right? To throw her boat this way, to throw her boat that way, right? Like, and that's what we feel like, most of us in life, is that we're in this boat, you know, the stock market crashes, it's a huge wave, our boat rocks, we get some water, and then we head this direction. And then another wave called the pandemic comes, right? And then it spins us in circles, and then we don't even know what direction we're heading because we feel so out of control. Like it feels terrible. It feels pointless. Like, what's the purpose? I have no control in my life. I have no anchor, right? Like, what's the point of even wanting stuff?
Right.
I don't have the power to direct this boat. I'm just subjected to all these waves. And I was like, Amanda didn't do that, right? She didn't allow the waves to dictate the outcome of her life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took the model, which originally Brooke had created, and it was circumstance was the first line. The next line was the thought. The next line is F for feeling. The next line was A for action, and the next line was R for result. So CTFAR, right? Circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result. Because circumstances are neutral. They're just factual things, right? Like, it snowed today. That's a circumstance. It's very neutral. It's frozen water landing on the earth. Okay. That circumstance, I have a thought about. It's cold outside, right? Or whatever thought I come up with. That thought then creates a feeling for me, because thoughts create our emotions, our feelings. And then that feeling drives human action or inaction. Our feelings, our emotions drive our actions. And those actions then create the results of my life. So if I want different results, I always have to go back to the T line and change my thoughts about it, right? Because my thoughts create emotions and emotions drive actions. That's where the sweet spot is. We don't spend all our time switching out our circumstances, right? And so I was thinking about this boat analogy, and I was like, wait, Amanda steered her boat to where she wanted to go. That's what thought work is. It's steering my mind in the direction I want to head in my life. It's making my brain think the thoughts that I need and want to think to get the results that I want in my life. So then that's when I was like, oh, well, it's S, situation. What is the situation that's going on, right? It's neutral. It's just facts. There's no interpretation on that. It's just neutral facts. And then what thought does my brain have about that situation? And then what emotion do those thoughts create? Chemically, we know, you and I working together, that I have a thought, it fires my neurons, neurotransmitters come in, right? It creates a chemical, energetically charged reaction in my body, right? It's the fastest way my brain can communicate with my body. It's through emotions, right? My body, if I'm in a primal situation, right? And there's this other tribe that's approaching to attack my tribe to take all of our food and our herd. I don't have time for my brain to tell my body, okay, checklist, raise your blood pressure, raise your heart rate, do vasoconstriction to these certain areas, right? We're going to be attacked. So it's like my brain sees that, decides this is a threat, creates a fear chemical, which then communicates to my body instantly. So then my body goes through all these processes in less than seconds, right? So it makes total sense that our thoughts then create our emotions, right? Sometimes we're not even aware of those thoughts, but it's all stimulated and started from the brain. Our emotions then, of course, drive our actions, the A line, right? We either take actions or we take inactions. We don't do it to feel emotions we want to feel or to avoid feeling emotions we don't want to feel. And then those actions and actions equal the results in our life. So if you look at the results, you'll always find your T line and the R line. And I like to think, I was taught this recently, your R line, your result line is neutral as well. It's not good or bad. It's just data. Does this thought serve you to get what you want? Here's the data. So this is not what I want. This thought doesn't serve me. Does this thought get me what I want? Look at my R line. Oh, I got what I want. Data. This thought serves me.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting perspective. I never thought about that. Yeah, that the results are neutral, but you're exactly right. It's just another situation, right? It's another fact. It's like, if this, then that, right? It's what has occurred. And that triggers a thought, or not a thought. Yeah, a thought and an emotion.
Yeah. Yeah, because then eventually your R line, and this is getting into a little bit more advanced thought work, your R line will eventually become your C line or your S line.
Your S line. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right? Like you didn't, like I didn't, let's say my R line is that I didn't sign a new client this week.
Yeah.
Well, now that becomes my S line. Did not sign a new client, neutral. What are my thoughts about that? Because I have thoughts about it that are driving emotions and actions. Sometimes in the beginning for new coaches, we don't sign a new client. That R line goes into our S line and we have really shitty thoughts about that. So then we go move into inaction.
Yeah.
Right. And so then we guarantee that we don't create another new client.
Right. Yeah.
So, go ahead. Do you have something?
I was just going to say, I really appreciated when you introduced the STEAR model to me, because it gives you an opportunity to kind of tease apart, right, those thoughts and those emotions. Because I think you're right. And what Brooke has alluded to is that oftentimes those things just happen for us and we recognize the feeling, right? Because that's kind of like that big sign that hits you like, oh, this either feels good or it feels bad. It's usually where people divide it to. But when you take the time to break it down and understand that the situation is neutral, that's kind of started this trickle down effect. But by teasing out the thoughts, teasing out the emotions and the action, really gives you a different framework and understanding, right? And separating that and recognizing what part you have to play, what you have control over to change that. Yeah. It took me a long time to try. No, maybe not a long time, but it took me time to recognize, like, I can come up with different perspectives for that T line, right? But I didn't realize when you separated out the emotions, right? Like how those were connected. It's like, oh, if I want to feel a different emotion, I can change, what my thought is about that situation. And so, I am very thankful that you introduced this to me, and that I can use it in regular thought work.
Yeah, because it just for me became this like, oh, it is literally the oar to steer my life with.
Yeah.
I'm no longer sitting in this boat being hit thinking it's all external. Hopefully a wave will hit precisely when I need it to and push me forward to the island. I'm no longer waiting on hoping, wishing, being lucky, external people, external deities to drive my life in the direction I want it to go. It's like, oh, now I have an oar and I can steer this boat in the direction that I want it to go. I can get to this island. I just have to steer it in that direction. So that's kind of how I came up with like the STEAR model for my brain. It's like, oh, that makes more sense to me, right? That my thoughts are steering my life.
Exactly.
If I'm having thoughts that I can't do this, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, this isn't possible, I have no control, it's going to end up in my R line. That's what I'm going to create, because our brain is it's a machine that's built to problem solve.
Yes.
Right? It's judging things constantly for our primal safety reasons. Is this safe or is this unsafe? That's it.
Yeah.
And then it's problem solving from there, right? So when it has beliefs are just thoughts that you have thought over and over and over again, right? We were taught something, we believed it, we thought it and thought it and thought it, right? So it creates this very well-worn neural pathway that's very easy to access.
Yes.
So our reticular activating system in our brain, that is made to go look for, it's a filter. It's a filter. It's made to be a filter. So it's going and it's filtering out all the external outside of me. What do we believe? Whether the belief serves me or not. Like if the belief is I'm not enough versus the belief of I'm capable, whichever one I have, the reticular activating system is going to filter out any information that is in direct opposition of that belief. So if I have a belief I'm not enough, anything that shows me I am enough, my RAS is not going to give my brain an opportunity to even see it, because it says it's irrelevant information that we do not need to waste time on. We're only looking for relevant information. Relevant information is things that we believe in. You're not enough. Okay. I'm going to go spend my time looking for evidence that you're not enough, and only allowing it information into our brain that affirms you're not enough. Right. So it's like, oh, okay. My beliefs are driving how I show up in the world and what I can see and what I can perceive. So if I believe in scarcity, that's what I'm going to see.
Right.
I'm going to see a scarce world. I'm going to see scarcity in food. I'm going to see scarcity in money. I'm going to see scarcity in resources, because my brain is not, it needs to filter. And that's the filter I've set on it. Only go look for scarcity.
Yeah.
So when we can, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the other piece of that I appreciated when you taught me this was that the action, right, could also be inaction.
Yeah.
Right. So the same idea, right? If you have that belief system and that scarcity, you always think of like, action, you're actively doing something, right? And oftentimes we don't realize that we choose to actively be in a situation we're not happy. Right. But when you understand that filter in that's been put into place by our belief system, that creates actually an inaction, which is an action that perpetuates that cycle.
Yeah, for sure. Like you see a lot when people are experiencing emotions of like overwhelm or anxiety, right? Depression, like they will move in, their A line will be filled with a lot of inaction. Yeah. Feeling stuck, powerless, right? Like they just don't feel in control of their life. So there's nothing I can do.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I love about the STEAR model, is that it, like you said, it just gives us a tool to start managing the brain, because in reality, we have 10 to 60,000 thoughts a day, right? Just information. Our brain is taking in information, making judgments. And most of us believe all of these thoughts that are creating emotions because it feels real.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Have a thought that creates a feeling. That feeling feels tangible and real, so that thought must be true. But again, if we go back to the reticular activating system, it's filtering out certain pieces of information and only seeing what it wants to see, right? So then it's not true. It's subjective interpretation of reality.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So then all thoughts are optional. Right? If we go down, and I know people always kind of butt me at that, like, what? Like, all thoughts are optional? Like, okay. Facts. There are facts that exist in the world. There's a fact in Oklahoma right now, in parts of the state, there is snow on the ground, right? That is provable in a court of law. I can take pictures of it. I can gather it. I can take it to court. In a court of law, I can prove factually there's snow on the ground, okay? Or 3 or more people will agree upon it, right? That is a fact. Everything else, subjective interpretation. So the fact is there's snow on the ground. But if I say it's cold out there, that's not a fact.
No, true.
That's a subjective interpretation of my reality. Why? Because someone from Alaska or North Dakota would be like, it's really warm out here today.
They're wearing shorts outside.
Right. Right. 14 degrees is warm for them because they're used to negative 47.
Exactly.
That's not a fact, right? It's a subjective interpretation of reality. So if most of my thoughts are subjective interpretation of reality, then they're all optional.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so then we can start using the STEAR model, being intentional about what thoughts we're choosing to believe, because we want certain results and we know these thoughts are going to create the results that we want. So then we start taking control of our life and creating the things we want by managing our mind or by creating emotions we want to feel.
Right. I think that when people understand how to use that STEAR model on a regular basis, it's really empowering to be able to recognize, oh, I can choose those thoughts, right? I can choose to give energy to certain thoughts and let go of other thoughts that are not helping me achieve those results that I want in my life.
Absolutely.
They're optional. Yeah.
Anything else?
I'm excited about this STEAR model. It takes a little while. So to be honest, it takes a little while. You're exactly right that this is how our mind thinks, right? Like this is how our mind thinks. This is how that reticular activating system works and filters information. Being able to slow down and put it on paper or put it through this STEAR filter, right? To evaluate, hey, what am I feeling, and reevaluate or revisiting that situation, right, that created this feeling, because usually that's what we notice first, right, is that feeling, and maybe in the action and response. But to go back and to be able to filter your situations or your experiences through the STEAR model, so empowering. And once you're able to kind of work through that, it's like creating another habit. Right. But when you do, it gives you a different perspective where you can kind of step back and look at those thoughts, look at, well, do I want to create that thought? Like what response is this thought creating? And do I want that or not? Right. So powerful. I love it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I want to just take just a second too to talk about emotions. One of my coaching colleagues, Simone Soul, did a model heresy class. It was fantastic. And she talked about the thought work, she talked about emotions. I'll just stay with that. That most of the time our thoughts create our emotions. We're just not aware of that thought. And we have to go and start doing thought work to start being more self-aware and to be able to watch our brain and see the thought first, because most of us are trained just to feel the emotion first. And we have to be intentional to go find the thought that created it. Okay. That is in most circumstances. Okay. Most situations. But from my perspective and through our program and our practice, I feel like emotions come from 3 different places. The majority of the time, they come from my thoughts. Okay. Second, and Simone taught this, that there are trauma response emotions. And those emotions bypass the T line. So in the STEAR model, situation, thought, emotion, action, result. Trauma response emotions bypass the T line. They're not necessarily created by a thought. They're created by, I want to say, the primal brain, and it's a survival response because your brain has gathered evidence from your past. This was painful. This hurt us. This was dangerous. And it's documented that. So when a situation comes up that's similar to it, it will go ahead and send up that emotion, that trauma response emotion, to help us get out of that situation faster. Right? It's like fight or flight or freeze.
Exactly. It's that safety.
Yes. And so I like the idea because I had a hard time in the beginning with the word victim and the word trauma, because I was emerging out of those mentalities, right? But when I started looking at trauma responses and I reframed them to survival responses, sometimes I'm in situations in my life that mimic situations where my survival, my brain decided this is a survival threatening situation, right? I go back to my previous marriage that had domestic violence components in it, right? So when I experience now a situation that could like reflect that a little bit, my brain automatically goes to that survival response and puts me in these emotions that I don't even have thoughts about. Like I go there. The third way I believe we create emotions is through chemical imbalances. Neurotransmitters, hormones, adrenals, okay? And the way I teach my clients to be able to start like teasing out what is what. Mm-hmm. An emotion is created by a thought, typically is less intense, right? Like we will feel this emotion, but it's not all consuming, right? We can kind of work our way out of it. Trauma, survival response emotions are all consuming. Mm-hmm. Basically hijack us, right? And we typically go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Yeah. So they are all consuming in the moment and we feel them very intensely. Okay. So that's kind of how you can start teasing. Like, is this a thought emotion or is this a trauma response emotion? And then the third, the chemical imbalanced emotion, is an emotion that's like you feel intensely, but maybe not as intensely as the trauma response one, right? It's not all consuming, but you feel it right consistently.
Yeah, it's reoccurring.
It's a reoccurring. I'm waking up in the morning feeling this anxiety. I'm going to bed with this anxiety. Like I cannot get rid of this emotion. I don't know why it's here. I'm not thinking, negative thoughts, or maybe you are, but there's nothing that caused, like there wasn't a situation that caused it.
Right.
Why it's just like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I just keep feeling this way all the time. And for me, a lot of times when they're intense and you don't know why, sometimes it's a chemical, right? Like for me, when I had COVID-19 back in January, out of nowhere, I got depressed and my suicidal thoughts started coming back. My life was pretty calm and pretty peaceful. But because of COVID, it brought on this. So then I could tell like, oh, this is a chemical thing.
Yeah.
Right? This is not a thought. This isn't a survival. This is a chemical thing because it's intense, but I don't know where it came from and it's persistent, right? Versus thought created emotions. They come and they go. They may stay around, but you can kind of identify it. Like they're not so all consuming. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does. Yeah. I think it's also very helpful to distinguish those different components or factors that are, that can create emotions for us to help us, get a clearer picture.
Yeah. And again, I will always go back to most of the time, emotions are created by thoughts.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That is like most of the time. The others do exist. They do come around, but they're just not the majority of the time created emotions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I got for you guys today.
Perfect. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks.
Bye.